Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UHSV Prometheus and watched the stars pass by. Her ship moved through space like an old whale swimming through an ocean, steady, reliable, nothing fancy about it. Behind her, the communications officer turned in his chair. "Captain, incoming transmission from the Valorian fleet." Elena nodded. "Put it through, Lieutenant." The screen flickered to life. A Valorian commander appeared, his face elegant and angular, his skin shimmering with a faint blue light. The Valorians always looked like they were carved from precious stones. Beautiful. Perfect. And they knew it. "Human vessel Prometheus," the Valorian said, his voice dripping with something that might have been amusement. "You are cleared for passage through Sector 7. Try not to fall behind the convoy. We know your engines are limited." Several Valorian officers laughed in the background. Elena kept her face neutral. She had heard worse in the 50 years since humanity joined the Galactic Council. "Acknowledged, Commander. Prometheus will maintain formation." The transmission ended. Her tactical officer, a young man named Marcus Chen, shook his head. "One of these days, Captain, we should show them what this old girl can really do." "Easy, Marcus," Elena said quietly. "We represent Earth out here. Every action, every word. We carry that weight." Marcus nodded, but she could see the frustration in his eyes. She felt it too. Every single day, the Prometheus was old by galactic standards. No energy shields that could stop a plasma blast. No quantum drives that could fold space. Her weapons were kinetic railguns and missile tubes, metal and explosives, things that went boom in the most basic way possible. The other council races found it hilarious. The Valorians with their elegant energy weapons, the Zixtar with their drone swarms controlled by quantum computers, the Kryn with their massive battle cruisers that could level a moon. And then there was humanity, showing up with what they called primitive ballistics. "Captain," the sensor officer called out. "We're approaching the dead zone boundary." Elena moved to look at the display. The dead zone. That's what everyone called this sector of space. Nothing here but old stars and empty planets. No resources worth fighting over. No trade routes. No threats. It was where the Council sent ships they wanted to forget about. And right now that meant the Prometheus. "Beginning patrol route, Alpha," Elena ordered. Standard sweep. "Let's do this by the book." The ship turned, its thrusters firing in short bursts. Around them, the Valorian convoy peeled away, heading back to the glittering core worlds where all the important things happened. The Prometheus was alone now. Just them and the empty dark. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez, the chief engineer, came onto the bridge 3 hours into the patrol. She had grease on her hands and a tired smile on her face. "Reactors running smooth, Captain. I've got the new kids down in engineering learning the systems. They can't believe how simple everything is." "Simple is reliable," Elena said. It was something she had said 1,000 times. "That's what I told them. No fancy energy matrices to calibrate. No quantum cores that need a dozen specialists. Just good old fusion and elbow grease." Sarah paused. "Did the Valorians give us grief again? When don't they?" Marcus muttered from his station. Elena shot him a look, but she couldn't disagree. 50 years in the Council, and humanity was still treated like the new kid who showed up wearing last year's fashion. Never mind that human ships had excellent safety records. Never mind that their crews were trained to handle any emergency. None of that mattered when your technology looked like it came from a museum. The shift changed. Night cycle began, though in space that didn't mean much. Elena stayed on the bridge. She often did. Sleep didn't come easy when you were responsible for 847 lives. "Captain," the night sensor officer said suddenly. His name was Johnson and he was young, fresh from the academy. "I'm picking up something weird." Elena was beside him in 3 steps. "Show me." The display showed a blip at the edge of their sensors. Just for a moment, then gone. "Quantum signature," Johnson said, his fingers dancing over the controls. "But it's not like anything in the database." He trailed off. The blip appeared again, slightly closer, then gone again. "Could be sensor ghost," Marcus offered. "We're at the edge of explored space. Strange radiation out here." But Elena didn't think so. She had been in space for 20 years. She knew when something felt wrong. "Log it," she ordered. "Full sensor records. Send a report to Council Command." "Yes, Captain." The next 3 days were quiet. The Prometheus continued its patrol, moving through the dead zone like a watchman walking his rounds. The blip appeared twice more. Each time closer. Each time stranger. On the 4th day, Council Command finally responded to her report. UHSV Prometheus, your sensor anomaly report has been reviewed. Analysis suggests equipment malfunction due to inferior human sensor technology. Recommend running full diagnostics. No further action required. Marcus slammed his hand on his console. Inferior technology? We built these sensors to detect threats they can't even imagine. Stand down, Lieutenant, Elena said firmly. But inside she felt the same anger. The same dismissal they always faced. She ordered the diagnostics anyway. Not because she thought the sensors were broken, but because she needed to be sure. 2 days later, the results came back. Everything was working perfectly. The blip appeared again that night. This time it stayed on the sensors for a full 10 seconds. Elena stared at it, her mind working through possibilities. Johnson, can you calculate the origin point? Working on it, Captain. His fingers flew. Got it. It's coming from... Oh, what? It's coming from outside the galaxy, ma'am. From the dark space beyond the rim, the bridge went quiet. Outside the galaxy. Nothing came from outside the galaxy. The Council had explored for thousands of years and never found another civilization beyond their own galactic cluster. Distance? Elena asked, unknown. But Captain, it's moving. Toward us. Elena felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. Speed? Calculating. Captain, that can't be right. According to this, it's moving at 0.7 light speed. Nothing moves that fast except in quantum space. But this is in normal space? Yes, ma'am. Elena stood in the center of her bridge, surrounded by her crew, in a ship that everyone called a relic. And she knew with absolute certainty that something was coming. Something big. Send another report to Council Command, she ordered. Priority 1. Include all data. Tell them we have a potential threat inbound from extragalactic space. The message was sent. 3 hours later, the response came back. Prometheus, cease sending false priority alerts. Your continued reports of equipment malfunction are noted in your file. Return to standard patrol. Council Command out. They didn't believe her. Of course they didn't. Why would they believe the humans in their primitive little ship? Elena looked at her crew. They looked back at her, waiting. We stay on station, she said quietly. We watch, we wait. And we stay ready. Ready for what, Captain? Johnson asked. Elena looked at the sensor display, at the blip that was growing stronger with each passing hour. I don't know yet, she said, but whatever it is, we're going to be the first to see it. The Prometheus continued its patrol through the dead zone. Behind them, the Council worlds glittered in the dark, safe and confident. Ahead, something moved through the empty space between galaxies, and the only thing standing watch was a ship no one took seriously. 3 weeks had passed since Elena first reported the anomaly. 3 weeks of watching the sensors, of tracking something that shouldn't exist. 3 weeks of being ignored by the Council. The blip was now a constant presence on their screens. Not one blip anymore. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. They moved in formation, precise and purposeful, like a school of fish swimming through an ocean. Captain, the quantum signatures are getting stronger, Johnson reported. He hadn't left the sensor station in 6 hours. None of them were sleeping much anymore. They're definitely getting closer. Elena leaned over his shoulder, studying the data. Each signature was unique but similar, like variations on a theme. Whatever they were organized, intelligent. Distance, 2 light years and closing. At current speed, they'll reach Council space in 48 hours. Marcus came to stand beside her. Captain, we need to do something. Council Command won't listen to reports. Maybe if we sent a ship back, someone to talk to them in person? That would take 3 days at best. We don't have 3 days. Elena straightened up. Keep monitoring. I want every bit of data we can collect. The next 8 hours passed in tense silence. The crew rotated through shifts, but everyone found reasons to stay on the bridge. They all felt it. Something was coming, then everything changed. Contact, Johnson shouted. New signature right on top of us. The bridge lights flickered. Every screen went white for a moment, then cleared. Floating in space 3 kilometers from the Prometheus was something impossible. It looked like a seed pod mixed with a machine. Organic curves covered in what might have been metal or might have been shell. Lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at. It was the size of a small shuttle, but the energy readings coming from it made their reactor look like a candle. Shields up, Marcus yelled, then stopped. They didn't have shields. Evasive action. Hold position, Elena commanded. Her voice was steady, but her heart was hammering. It's not attacking. It's scanning us. They could feel it somehow, like invisible fingers touching the ship. The sensation made their teeth ache and their skin crawl. It lasted for 30 seconds that felt like an hour. Then the object vanished. Just disappeared like it had never been there. What the hell was that? Marcus breathed. A probe, Elena said. It was studying us. She turned to communications. Get me Council Command. Emergency channel. Don't take no for an answer. The communication officer worked frantically. They're not responding to emergency channels, Captain. They're saying we need to file a proper request and wait our turn. Tell them we just had first contact with an unknown species. Tell them it's not a drill. 5 minutes later, a tired-looking Zixtar administrator appeared on screen. The Zixtar looked like upright insects with multiple arms and compound eyes. This one looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Prometheus, your continued false alerts are becoming a problem. First, phantom sensor readings. Now, claims of first contact? Your crew needs retraining and proper protocol. This isn't a false alert, Elena said, trying to keep her voice calm. We have visual confirmation. Data logs. Something just scanned our ship from 3 kilometers away. Visual confirmation of what? Your report says the object disappeared. How convenient. The administrator's mandibles clicked in what might have been a laugh. Human imagination is remarkable, Captain. But the Council has real work to do. The screen went dark. Marcus looked like he wanted to punch something. They think we're making it up. They think we're incompetent. Let them think what they want, Elena said, but her hands were shaking. She hid them behind her back. We know what we saw. Log everything. Every detail. When this is over, we'll have proof. If we survive, she didn't say. The probe's visit changed everything. The crew understood now that this wasn't a drill or a sensor malfunction. Something was out there, something real. 12 hours later, the Council worlds closest to the rim went dark. Captain, the communication officer spun in his chair. I'm getting automated distress signals from Valorian Station 12. Then they cut off. Now Station 14 is offline. Then 19. Show me the pattern. The star map appeared on the main screen. Red dots marked the silent stations. They formed a line moving inward from the galactic rim, moving toward the heart of Council space. It's a wave, Sarah said softly. She had come to the bridge when the alert started. They're not just coming. They're sweeping through. How many stations have gone dark? Elena asked. 14 so far. No, wait, 17 now. Captain, these are major installations. Thousands of people on each one. And they're just gone. No fights. No warnings. Just silence. Elena's mind raced. An enemy that could take out fortified stations without a shot being fired. An enemy that moved through space faster than should be possible. An enemy that the Council didn't believe existed. Get me command again. Show them this data. This time they didn't get an administrator. They got a Kryn general, his scales gleaming red with agitation. The Kryn were warriors, proud and fierce. This one looked scared. Prometheus, we are tracking the situation. A fleet is being mobilized. Stand by for orders. General, we have data on the enemy. We've been tracking them for weeks. Your orders are to remain at your station. The Council fleet will handle this. Command out. The screen went dark again. They're still not listening, Marcus said. Even with stations going dark, they don't want to hear from us. Contact the fleet, Elena ordered. Any ships in this sector. Warn them what's coming. For the next 6 hours, they tried to reach anyone who would listen. Most ignored them. A few responded with irritation at being bothered by the human ship. One Valorian captain actually laughed. Return to your patrol, Prometheus. Leave warfare to real warships. Then the Council fleet arrived. 200 ships, the finest vessels from a dozen species. Dreadnoughts that could crack planets. Cruisers bristling with plasma cannons. Fighters that moved like liquid light. They moved past the Prometheus without acknowledgement, heading toward the approaching threat. Elena watched them go, magnificent and confident. Should we follow them, Captain? Marcus asked. Elena looked at her crew. Young faces and old, all looking to her for answers. We weren't invited to their party, she said. But plot a parallel course. Stay at maximum sensor range. If they need us, we'll be there. You think they'll need us? Sarah asked. Look at them. 200 ships. The best technology in the galaxy. Elena didn't answer. She just watched the fleet disappear into the dark, heading toward something they didn't understand. Heading toward an enemy that had already destroyed everything in its path without making a sound. The Prometheus followed, alone and unwanted. Hours passed. The sensor readings grew stronger. The enemy fleet was close now. Very close, Captain. Johnson's voice was barely a whisper. The signatures are... They're everywhere. There must be thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands. And the Council fleet? They're moving to intercept. They're forming battle formations. Elena gripped the arm of her command chair. Give me visual. Maximum magnification, the screen changed. At first, there was nothing. Just empty space and distant stars. Then the sky opened. Reality itself seemed to tear like fabric being ripped apart. Lines of impossible light split the darkness, and through those tears they came. Ships. If they could be called ships. They looked alive and dead at the same time. Organic hulls covered in technological growths, sizes ranging from small fighters to things as big as moons. They emerged from the tears in space by the hundreds, by the thousands, flowing into normal space like blood from a wound. Dear God, Marcus whispered. The Council fleet opened fire. Plasma bolts lit up the darkness. Energy beams that could boil oceans. Missiles that could level cities. All of it struck the approaching vessels and nothing happened. The enemy ships didn't dodge. They didn't return fire. They just kept coming, absorbing every shot like it was nothing. Shields flickered around them. Adapting, learning, turning every weapon into useless light. They're learning, Elena said, horror growing in her voice. Each shot teaches them. Each attack makes them stronger. The first Council ships started dying. Valorian dreadnoughts cracked open like eggs. Zixstar cruisers simply came apart. The Kryn battle cruiser, the pride of their fleet, exploded in a flash that was visible across the sector. It took 7 minutes. 7 minutes for 200 ships to be reduced to debris and bodies. 7 minutes for the finest military force in Council history to be destroyed. And the enemy fleet didn't even slow down. Captain, Johnson said, his voice shaking. They're moving toward us now. 30 ships. No, 50. They're accelerating. Elena looked at her crew, at the faces of people who trusted her to keep them alive. At the old ship that everyone said was worthless. Sound general quarters, she said quietly. All hands to battle stations. Load all weapons. Prepare for combat, Captain, Marcus said. We can't fight them. You saw what they did to the fleet. I know. Elena sat down in her command chair. But we're all that's standing between them and the Council worlds. Someone has to slow them down. Someone has to give people time to evacuate. She looked at the approaching enemy on her screen. Dozens of ships, each one capable of destroying everything she loved. Today, Elena Vasquez said, they're going to learn that humans don't run. Today we show them what this old ship can do. The enemy ships moved through the debris field where the Council fleet had been. They didn't stop to examine the wreckage. They didn't celebrate. They just kept coming, patient and unstoppable, like a tide that knew it would eventually cover everything. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Elena watched them approach. 50 ships now, each one radiating power that made her teeth ache. Behind her, the crew worked in tense silence. Every station was manned. Every weapon was loaded. They all knew what was about to happen. Range? She asked. 50,000 kilometers and closing, Marcus reported. His voice was steady now. Fear had burned away, leaving something harder behind. 30 seconds to weapons range. Captain, Sarah's voice came through from engineering. Reactor is at maximum stable output. All systems green. We're ready down here. Copy that, Sarah. Stand by for combat power. Elena stood up, moving to the center of the bridge. She thought about giving a speech. Something inspiring. Something brave. But her crew didn't need words. They knew why they were here. Tactical, prepare to fire on my command. Target the lead ship. Full railgun barrage, followed by missiles. Targeting solutions locked, Marcus said. Captain, their shields, I know. Fire anyway. The Prometheus shuddered as her railgun spoke. Tungsten rods, each one weighing half a ton. Accelerated to a fraction of light. Speed, simple, brutal. Ancient technology by Galactic standards. The rounds crossed the distance in seconds and struck the lead enemy ship. Everyone held their breath. The shield flickered, tried to adapt. But there was nothing to adapt to. No energy signature to analyze. No plasma to redirect. Just solid metal moving at ridiculous speeds, following the laws of physics that couldn't be reasoned with. The first rod punched through the shield like it wasn't there. Then the second, the third, the fourth. 20 rounds struck in 3 seconds, each one tearing through the organic metal hull, each one carrying enough kinetic energy to level a city block. The enemy ship shuddered. Atmosphere vented from a dozen holes. Lights flickered and died along its length. "Did we?" Johnson started to say. The enemy ship exploded. Not dramatically. It just came apart, pieces spinning away into the dark. The bridge erupted in cheers. Marcus was laughing, almost crying. "We killed it! Captain, we actually killed it! Missiles away!" Elena ordered. "Target the next 3 ships. Don't give them time to adapt." Nuclear-tipped missiles streaked from the Prometheus's tubes. Old technology. Forbidden by council laws, too barbaric. But out here, with humanity's back against the wall, there were no laws. The missiles struck. Nuclear fire bloomed in the darkness. 2 more enemy ships died. A third was crippled, tumbling end over end. "They're adjusting," Johnson called out. "The remaining ships are changing formation. They're spreading out." Elena watched the enemy fleet reorganize. They were learning, yes, but learning took time. And every second they spent learning was a second they weren't destroying human colonies. All weapons, continuous fire. Don't let them think. Don't let them adapt. Hit them with everything. The battle became chaos. The Prometheus dove and weaved through space, her thrusters firing in patterns that seemed random but were calculated with desperate precision. She was smaller than her enemies, more agile. Without shields, she had no energy signature for them to track. To their sensors, she was a ghost appearing only when her weapons fired. Railguns hammered away. Missiles flew in waves. The crew worked like a machine, loading and firing, loading and firing. Shells piled up in the corridors as loaders worked until their hands bled. 10 enemy ships died, then 12, then 15. But the Prometheus was bleeding too. A glancing hit from some kind of energy weapon melted through Section 7. 20 crew members died in an instant. Another hit took out the forward sensors. A third punched through the hull and killed the backup reactor. "Engineering reports Reactor 2 is offline," Marcus shouted over the alarms. "We're down to 60% power. Redirect from life support," Elena ordered. "Route everything to weapons and engines. Captain, that will do it." The temperature on the bridge began to drop as the life support systems powered down. Frost formed on the consoles. The crew's breath came in clouds. But the weapons kept firing. 18 enemy ships destroyed, 22. But they were learning. The remaining ships had figured out to stay spread out, to move unpredictably. Their return fire was getting more accurate. The Prometheus took hit after hit. Whole sections were open to space now. The casualty reports kept coming. "Captain?" Sarah's voice hoarse from smoke inhalation. "We've got fires in engineering. Hull breaches on decks 4, 7, and 9. We can't take much more." Elena looked at the tactical display. 28 enemy ships destroyed, 22 still coming. The math was simple and brutal. They wouldn't survive. But behind those 22 ships, behind the battle, the deeper sensors showed something else. More enemy vessels. Thousands of them. A whole invasion fleet moving toward council space. If the Prometheus ran, these 22 ships would reach the core worlds in hours. Millions would die. Billions, if they stayed, they would die. But they might buy enough time for the council to evacuate. To prepare. To survive. Elena made her choice. "All hands. This is the captain." Her voice echoed through the dying ship. "I'm ordering evacuation of all non-essential personnel. Engineering teams, damage control, medical, get to the escape pods." "That's an order." "Captain, we can't," Sarah started. "That's an order, Lieutenant. Get your people out. You have 5 minutes." Across the ship, crew members abandoned their posts and ran for the escape pods. 200 made it off before the pods couldn't launch anymore. 200 out of 847. The rest stayed. Because their posts were essential. Because someone had to keep the weapons firing. Because running wasn't in them anymore. Elena looked around her bridge. Marcus at tactical. Johnson at sensors. Rodriguez at communications. None of them had left. "You should have evacuated," she said quietly. "With respect, Captain," Marcus said. "Go to hell." She almost smiled. "Fair enough. What's our status? We've got maybe 30 minutes of air left. The reactor is overheating. Hull integrity is at 20%. He paused. "But we still have ammunition. And we still have engines." Elena understood. She had always understood. From the moment they decided to stay, she knew how this would end. How many enemy ships left? 17. And their command vessel? She had noticed it earlier, hanging back, coordinating the others. Bigger than the rest. More powerful. The brain of the beast, still there, still out of range. Elena sat back in her chair. Her ship was dying around her. Her crew was dying. But they had fought well. They had made the enemy pay for every meter of space. Now it was time to make them pay for everything. Plot a course for the command vessel. Maximum acceleration. Sarah, I need you to overload the reactor. Set it for a cascade failure. Silence on the bridge. Then I, Captain. How long? 5 minutes after impact should do it. Understanding dawned on their faces. What Elena was ordering. What they were about to do. All remaining weapons to be set for detonation on impact, Elena continued. Every missile. Every round. Everything we have left. And then the reactor goes up. That will be one hell of an explosion, Marcus said softly. That's the idea. Big enough to take out the command ship. Big enough to disrupt their formation. Big enough to give the council time. She looked at each of them. You can still take the escape pods. There's still time. None of them moved. Permission to speak freely, Captain? Johnson asked. Granted. I think I speak for everyone when I say not a chance in hell. The others nodded. Marcus smiled. Sarah laughed, though it sounded like a sob. Then battle stations, everyone. One last time. Let's show them what humans can do. The Prometheus turned, her damaged hull groaning. Her engines fired, pushing her past safe limits, past survivable limits. She accelerated toward the enemy command vessel, toward the heart of the fleet. The remaining enemy ships tried to stop her. Energy weapons carved burning lines across her hull. But she wouldn't stop. Couldn't stop. The dying ship picked up speed, trailing atmosphere and debris, a comet of human defiance screaming through the dark. 5,000 kilometers. 3,000. 1,000. Now, Sarah, now. The reactor began its cascade. The missiles armed. The railguns loaded their final rounds. Everything the Prometheus had left, everything she was, focused into one final moment. Elena gripped her chair. Beside her, Marcus reached over and took her hand. The others did the same, linking together. Crew and ship becoming one. It's been an honor, Elena said. The honor was ours, Captain, they said back. The Prometheus struck the enemy command vessel at 17,000 kilometers per hour. For just a moment, time seemed to stop. The two ships locked together, hung in space like a piece of dark art. Then the world became light. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Every warhead, every round, the reactor going critical, all of it releasing its energy in a fraction of a second. The enemy command vessel didn't just die. It was erased, converted to plasma and radiation. And in the blast, 12 more enemy ships were caught, destroyed by the fury of one old human warship that refused to die quietly. In the silence that followed, 5 enemy ships remained, lost, confused, their coordination gone, their leader dead. The escape pods drifted through space, small and fragile, carrying the 200 souls who had survived the Prometheus. Inside Pod 7, Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez stared at the empty black where her ship had been, where her captain had been, where 647 of her friends had chosen to stay. They're gone, someone whispered. A young engineer, barely 20 years old. They're really gone. Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat was too tight, her chest too heavy. She had served on the Prometheus for 8 years. Elena Vasquez had been more than her captain. She had been her mentor, her friend. Now she was light and ash. Lieutenant, the pod pilot said, we're being picked up. Council rescue ship inbound. Through the small window, Sarah could see it approaching. A Valorian medical frigate, its white hull marked with the symbols of mercy. It was beautiful in the way all Valorian ships were beautiful. She wanted to hate it, hate them. The people who had called the Prometheus primitive, who had laughed at humanity's technology, who hadn't believed them until it was too late. But hate took energy she didn't have anymore. The pods were brought aboard one by one. The Valorian medical staff worked efficiently, treating injuries, checking for radiation exposure. They were professional, kind even, but they didn't look the human survivors in the eye. Sarah was the senior surviving officer. That made her responsible for the crew. She found them scattered through the medical bay, getting treatment, holding each other, crying, is their word? She asked a Zixtar doctor. About the enemy fleet? The doctor's mandibles clicked softly. The Council has mobilized every available ship. 3,000 vessels are moving to intercept, but what? The enemy fleet is massive. We count over 10,000 vessels, and after what they did to the first fleet, the doctor trailed off. Then what your ship did, buying us time. It may have saved us all. We needed hours to evacuate the core worlds. The Prometheus gave us those hours. Sarah nodded numbly. 3,000 council ships against 10,000 enemy vessels. Even with the warning, even with time to prepare, the odds were terrible. There's something else, the doctor said. Your captain sent a data burst just before the end. Complete tactical analysis of the enemy, their weaknesses, their patterns. She sent everything, and the Council War Command is adapting their tactics based on it. They're arming ships with your weapons. The kinetic ones, railguns, missiles, things we had abandoned as primitive. The doctor made a sound that might have been a laugh. It turns out primitive is exactly what we need. Over the next 6 hours, the rescue ship brought them to a council station far behind the lines. A place called Haven 7. It was packed with refugees from a dozen worlds, all fleeing the approaching enemy. Sarah and her crew were given quarters, food, medical care, everything they needed except the one thing that mattered. They had lost their ship, lost their family. On the second day, the Battle of Cygnus Reach began. 3,000 council ships, armed with human weapons, using human tactics, fighting with a desperate fury they had never known before. The battle was broadcast across every council world. People needed to see, needed to know if they would survive. Sarah watched it on a screen in the common area, surrounded by her crew. They held hands. They barely breathed. The council fleet didn't try to meet the enemy head-on like before. Instead, they used the Prometheus's data. They spread out. They attacked in waves. They used the kinetic weapons that the enemy shields couldn't adapt to. Ships died. Dozens, hundreds. But this time, the enemy died too. The battle raged for 6 days. 6 days of constant fighting, of ships burning and crews dying, of last stands and desperate charges. The space around Cygnus Reach became a graveyard, filled with debris from both sides. But slowly, impossibly, the Council fleet began to win. On the 7th day, the enemy fleet broke. The surviving ships retreated back toward the galactic rim, back toward the darkness they had come from. They left behind over 7,000 destroyed vessels, a defeat so total that it would take them decades to recover. The cost was terrible. 40% of the Council fleet was destroyed. Entire species had lost most of their military. Worlds had been evacuated, their populations scattered, but they had won. They had survived, and everyone knew who had made it possible. 3 weeks after the battle, Sarah stood in front of a mirror in her new quarters on Haven 7. She wore her dress uniform. It felt strange, wrong. The last time she had worn it was at a ceremony back on Earth before she joined the Prometheus. You ready? Marcus Chen stood in the doorway. He wore his uniform too, crisp and clean. His eyes were still red. None of them were sleeping well. No, Sarah said honestly, but I don't think that matters. They walked together through the station corridors. Other survivors joined them, the 200 who had escaped. They moved in silence, a small group of humans in a station filled with aliens. The ceremony was held in the largest observation deck on Haven 7. Thousands attended. Representatives from every council species, military officers in gleaming uniforms, politicians and diplomats, even common citizens who had survived the evacuation. They all stood as the human survivors entered. It was the first time anyone could remember every species standing for humans. Not out of protocol, out of respect, the Valorian High Admiral stood at the front. He was old, his blue skin faded with age, his elegant features marked by scars. He had commanded the defense fleet, had watched a third of his ships die. Today, he began, his voice carried by speakers throughout the station. We honor the fallen of the UHSV Prometheus, 647 souls who gave everything to save us all. Images appeared on the massive screens, faces, names, Captain Elena Vasquez, Chief Engineer Rodriguez's entire team, the bridge crew who had stayed, the gunners who had fired until their weapons melted. Young faces and old, all united in their choice. Sarah felt tears running down her face. Around her, her crew wept openly. They weren't alone. Across the observation deck, council members cried too. Valorians with their faces in their hands. Zixtar with their heads bowed. Even the proud Kryn, Warriors who rarely showed emotion stood with water in their eyes. For 50 years, the Admiral continued, we dismissed humanity. We called their technology primitive. We called their ships relics. We were fools. His voice broke slightly. The Prometheus was worth 100 of our finest vessels, not because of her weapons, not because of her engines, but because of her crew, because of their courage, because when we ran out of answers, they showed us the way. He paused, looking at the human survivors. Humanity came to the stars later than the rest of us. While we built beautiful ships for exploration and trade, they built weapons for war. We judged them for this, called them violent, brutal. We didn't understand. The Admiral gestured to the space beyond the windows, where the debris of battle still drifted. They built weapons for war because they know what war truly means. They come from a world that has seen horrors we cannot imagine. They have fought each other for thousands of years. They know the price of survival. And when the true enemy came, when the darkness from beyond threatened to consume us all, they were ready. They had always been ready, because they never forgot that the universe can be cruel, that peace must be defended, that sometimes survival requires sacrifice. The Admiral turned to a Valorian officer holding a display case. Inside was a medal, the Star of Valor, the highest honor the Council could give. Captain Elena Vasquez is posthumously awarded the Star of Valor, along with every member of her crew who stayed, who fought, who died to give us time. He opened the case and held up the medal. It caught the light, shining like a distant star. Let the record show that on this day the Council recognizes its debt to humanity, a debt we can never truly repay. The Prometheus saved us. Now it falls to us to be worthy of that sacrifice. The ceremony continued. More speeches. More tears. The human survivors were offered positions in the Council War Command. Earth was given a seat at the highest levels of government. New ships were commissioned, combining Council technology with human weapons and tactics, but Sarah barely heard any of it. She stared at the images of her fallen crew, remembering their laughter, their voices, their hopes and dreams. They had been so young, so brave, so foolish, so human. After the ceremony, Sarah stood alone at the observation deck window looking at the stars. Someone approached. She didn't need to turn around. She knew the footsteps. The Council is commissioning a new ship, Marcus said quietly. Prometheus, they want us to crew it. I know. Will you? Sarah thought about Elena, about the choice her captain had made, about the 647 who had stayed when they could have run. Yes, she said. Someone needs to remember. Someone needs to carry forward what they died for. Marcus stood beside her. Together they watched the stars, each one a reminder of how vast the universe was, how small they were, how much their sacrifice had mattered. They'll never forget us now, Marcus said. Never dismiss us again. No, Sarah agreed. But they shouldn't have needed this. Shouldn't have needed 647 deaths to see us clearly. Maybe. But now they've seen. Now they know. Humanity isn't just another species. We're survivors. We're warriors. We're the ones who stand when everyone else falls. 3 months after the Battle of Cygnus reached, the memorial was complete. It hung in space exactly where the Prometheus had made her final stand. A sphere of quantum crystal, 3 kilometers wide, rotating slowly in the darkness. Inside the crystal, suspended forever, were 847 names, each one etched in light that would never fade. Each one a reminder of the price that had been paid. Captain Elena Vasquez, Lieutenant Marcus Chen, Chief Engineer Sarah Rodriguez's entire team. All of them, from the newest recruit to the most veteran officer. Equal in death, equal in honor. Ships came from across the galaxy to see it, to pay respects, to remember. Today, the space around the memorial was filled with vessels, thousands of them. Warships and civilian transports, Valorian cruisers flying beside Kryn battle cruisers, Zixtar drones hovering near human frigates. Every species, every world, all gathered for the dedication. Admiral Sarah Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UHSV Prometheus II and looked at the memorial. 3 months had passed, but the pain was still fresh. Every morning she woke up expecting to see Elena in the captain's chair. Every night she dreamed of the bridge crew who had stayed behind. Admiral, her communications officer said softly. They're ready for you. Sarah nodded. She smoothed down her uniform and walked to the transport shuttle. The trip to the memorial platform took only minutes, but it felt like hours. The platform was a temporary structure built just for today's ceremony. Hundreds of officials stood there, representing the entire Galactic Council. At the center, in places of honor, were the human survivors. The 200 who had escaped. They wore their dress uniforms, metal shining on their chests, but their eyes were hollow, haunted. Admiral Rodriguez, the Valorian High Admiral, said as she approached. He was the same one who had spoken at Haven 7. He looked older now, tired from the long battle to rebuild the fleet. "Are you ready?" "No," Sarah said honestly, "but I doubt anyone truly is." "You're right." He smiled sadly. "Come. It's time." They walked to the center of the platform together. Around them, the fleet waited in silence. Thousands of ships, millions of crew members, all watching. The ceremony began with silence. 2 full minutes of it, just the sound of breathing and the quiet hum of machinery. Sarah looked at the memorial, at the names glowing inside. She found Elena's name near the top. Captain, leader, friend. Hero. The Valorian High Admiral spoke first. His voice was broadcast to every ship, every station, every world in council space. "We gather here today in the presence of sacrifice, in the shadow of courage we failed to recognize. For 50 years, humanity walked among us as the newest member of our council. We welcomed them. We traded with them. We called them friends." He paused, his voice heavy with emotion. "But we did not truly see them. We saw their ships and called them primitive. We saw their weapons and called them barbaric. We saw their history of war and called them violent. We were blind to what they really were." A hologram appeared above the platform. The Prometheus, not as she had been at the end, broken and burning, but as she had been before, solid, reliable, unimpressive by galactic standards. This ship saved us, not despite being primitive, but because of what we called primitive, while we built weapons that could be adapted to, analyzed, countered. Humanity built weapons that simply worked. Kinetic rounds that follow the laws of physics. Nuclear fire that cannot be reasoned with. They built these things because they know a truth we had forgotten. The Admiral's voice grew stronger. The universe does not care about elegance. It does not reward beauty. When darkness comes, when the enemy arrives, only one thing matters: survival. And humanity, for all their short time among the stars, understands survival better than any of us. He turned to Sarah and the other survivors. "Today we do 3 things. First, we honor the fallen, the 847 who gave everything. Second, we admit our failure. We should have listened. We should have believed. We should have seen humanity clearly. And third, we make a promise." The Admiral raised his hand. Across the fleet, every ship activated their lights. Thousands of vessels all shining at once, creating a galaxy of illumination around the memorial. We promise to never forget. We promise to learn from our mistakes. And we promise to stand beside humanity, now and forever. Not as superior beings sharing our knowledge, but as equals, as brothers and sisters in arms, as survivors together. The lights dimmed. Then Sarah stepped forward. It was her turn to speak. She had written a speech, spent days on it. But now, standing here with the names of her dead friends glowing behind her, the words seemed wrong. She put away her notes and spoke from her heart. "Captain Elena Vasquez was my friend, my mentor, the best officer I ever served under." Sarah's voice cracked. She took a breath. She was also stubborn, terrible at chess, and she snored loud enough to be heard through bulkheads. Quiet laughter rippled through the survivors. Even in grief, humans found room for joy. For memory that was more than just sadness. She was human, flawed and wonderful and entirely ordinary. Like all of us. Like the 847 who stayed when they could have run. They weren't superheroes. They were engineers and gunners and communications officers. They were kids fresh from the academy, and veterans counting down to retirement. They were people. Sarah turned to look at the memorial. But when the moment came, when the choice was given to them, they did something extraordinary. They chose to stay. They chose to fight. They chose to die so that others might live. Not because they were trained to, not because orders demanded it, but because it was right. Because someone had to. Because that's what humanity does. She faced the crowd again. People ask me why stay? Why not run? Why sacrifice everything? Sarah smiled through her tears. The answer is simple. Because we're human. Because when we came to the stars, we brought our history with us. Thousands of years of fighting. Of dying for causes and countries and ideas. Of standing against the dark even when victory seemed impossible. We're not special. We're not chosen. We're just the species that never learned to quit. That never learned to accept defeat. That looked at impossible odds and said, "Watch us anyway." Sarah's voice grew stronger. The Prometheus was a joke to the Council. Old technology, primitive weapons, a ship for the foolish humans who didn't know better. But Captain Vasquez knew something the Council didn't. She knew that when you're the last one standing between the enemy and everything you love, nothing else matters. Not shields, not plasma weapons, not quantum drives. What matters is this. Are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to stand? Are you willing to die? And the answer, for 847 humans on an old ship everyone had forgotten, was yes. Yes. Always yes. Sarah's voice dropped to barely a whisper. They bought us time with their lives. Hours. Precious hours that let the Council evacuate. That let the fleet prepare. That let us survive. And now we stand here, living because they died. And we owe them everything. She turned back to the memorial one last time. Captain Vasquez, crew of the Prometheus. You were ordinary people who did extraordinary things. You were the warship no one took seriously. And you saved us all. We will never forget. We will never stop honoring your sacrifice. And we will never again be blind to the strength that comes from being human. Sarah stepped back. The ceremony continued with more speeches, more honors. Earth's ambassador announced that every human ship would now carry the name Prometheus somewhere in its registry. A reminder. A promise. The Kryn war chief, massive and scarred, spoke of how his people had studied the battle, how they were rewriting their entire military doctrine based on what the Prometheus had done. We thought we understood war, he said. The humans taught us we knew nothing. A Zixtar scientist explained how human tactics were being taught in every military academy, how the concept of primitive but effective had changed Council technology development. We chased complexity, she said. Humanity reminded us that simple often works best. On and on it went, species after species acknowledging the debt they owed, acknowledging that they had been wrong about humanity. Finally, as the ceremony ended, Sarah returned to Prometheus II. Her ship, a vessel built using both Council technology and human innovation, faster than the original, better armed, but still carrying the philosophy that had made the first Prometheus great, simple, reliable, ready for anything. Orders, Admiral? Her executive officer asked. Sarah looked at the memorial one last time, at the names glowing in the darkness, at the reminder of what her people had done. Set course for the Galactic Rim. The enemy retreated, but they're still out there. Still a threat. We need to be ready for when they come back. Aye, Admiral. Will we be going alone? Sarah smiled. It was the first real smile she had managed in 3 months. No, check the tactical display. The officer did. His eyes widened. Admiral, there are over 300 ships forming up with us. Council vessels. All of them. They learned, Sarah said quietly. They learned that you don't face the dark alone. That strength comes from standing together. That humanity isn't some primitive species to be tolerated. We're partners, equals, warriors who've earned our place. The Prometheus II turned toward the rim, toward the unknown, toward whatever threats waited in the darkness beyond the galaxy, and behind her, 300 ships followed. Valorian and Kryn, Zixtar, and human, all of them flying in formation.